Hey, welcome to another edition of Seduction Tech, where I really only talk to special people. Anybody that's here has to be special, some ways or another. And another special person is here. I am so honored to have with us Audrey Black or uh, Mistress Audrey. Can you actually you tell us who you are, really, so
Okay.
that I can abide by your pronouns or whatever needs to happen.
My name is Mistress Audry Lou Black. I've been a dominatrix for over 25 years. I do, when I'm in professional spaces, even teaching for professional spaces, I do like to emphasize the mistress because that's what my background is. That's what my affidavit is. When I'm speaking from a position of authority or education, it's that. And so I have to make sure that all the information I'm giving is correct because people are going to take it as an authority. And it kind of just holds me to a little bit of a higher standard when I am transmitting things. I'm more clear about my personal preferences versus the standard, that sort of thing.
Interesting. So, mistress, it's kind of like a doctor. Like you couldn't be called a doctor if you're not a doctor. Can someone be called a mistress without being a mistress?
You just got into a whole question within the kink community. You don't even know it.
I know. That's why I'm asking. We all want to know.
Yeah. The kink community, BDSM, is one of those interesting spaces because we don't have a governing board. And to be entirely honest, we probably shouldn't have a governing board. It is the kind of thing that becomes inaccessible to the average person if you put it in the same space you would put like academia. If you tried to like make that into the same kind of thing, people who are doing personal exploration, people who are, just kind of looking for self-identity, they're not going to be able to access that. But we do have a lot of education, and a lot of it is community-driven education. So if you connect with any dungeon in the world, if they're not education focused, like that's not what their thing is, they know the next door dungeon who has groups that are teaching 101s, that are teaching shibari classes, that are bringing in experts who've been doing this for 20 years to teach a workshop on it. And so can anybody call themselves mistress? Well, are you talking about a professional, which I am? Are you talking about somebody who is just doing it because they have a lot of experience in that space and has the education? I have that as well. Or are you talking about somebody who self-identifies in the role of a dominant and prefers the title mistress over, say, like domina, or all of those categories count? So part of it is that you do kind of have to follow up with the person and go, okay, mistress, what does that mean to you? And how are you using that in the space?
So, great question that you brought up. What is a mistress? What exactly, and in your context, what do you do?
So, in general, a mistress is a femme-oriented, identifying dominant. If you're looking at dominant, submissive, that's what it is. What their specific interests in can change wildly because every single one of us is a person and some of us are people and professional people. So we got both worlds, right? I specifically specialize in long-term ownership and consensual behavioral modification, which means that while I am a professional, all of my clients, or pets as I refer to them, are long-term. They're with me for months to years. We work on things that are both within the realm of sexuality and just daily life, how they want to exist in the world, their independent goals. And I use classic operant training techniques, your Skinner, your How to Train a Dog, with full consent, full knowledge, conversation, and often incorporate kink to do so.
Oh, that was a lot. I'm going to be honest. I did not know it was this deep.
It depends on the person. Yeah.
Well, no, but meaning, when looking from the outside, like an outsider, that, I just thought, hey, yeah, she'll beat you up or something. I didn't know
I can do
that they
that
were like,
too.
we did too. I thought that was what it was.
Yeah.
So you're describing a whole world with subworlds and subcategories and groups. And, well, so how do we digest this in a way that the normal person can go, I'm into that or I'm not? Like, because I don't know if I will be into getting hit, or I don't, and I thought that that's what a mistress would do. Now that I know all of these other things, what was your introduction into this world that you figure out this is what you like?
So my introduction to the world was quite unusual. I was in, honestly, a not great situation, and I was kind of adopted by a local, very private dungeon. They had membership and clients and all of that work. But when I was brought in, it wasn't as a dominatrix. It was as somebody who had done a favor for somebody in that group. They knew I was in need and went, hey, why don't you just clean up a little bit? Why don't we get a few dollars into you? And I went from a situation in which I think a lot of people would think about somebody who's at risk going into a dungeon, assuming that it's dark and sexual and that they're going to be put into uncomfortable situations. I went from being put into uncomfortable situations in the outside world that nobody wanted to talk about to being in this dungeon and for the first time hearing words like consent. And this is what no means. And these are the various ways we can say no. And watching brilliant, dynamic women teach and train each other their skills and laugh about it and have a really great time exploring themselves and then interacting with clients and loved ones that way. And it was such a safe space for me to be in that I was like, I want to learn that thing. I want to learn that thing. And then I just kept learning, which is probably my favorite thing in the entire world to do. And
Wow.
I found that I got very attached to my clients. I wanted to do more than an hour-long one-off session, even if it was going to repeat. So that's how I developed my own system for something that makes me feel emotionally fulfilled and kind of like benefits both of us.
Well, I'm just imagining all of these things, and you're saying you learned this thing, and
Yeah.
it's like a skill, almost like a sport.
So I think that most people, when they are visualizing sex and BDSM, they're like, well, sex, vanilla sex, it includes all of these things. It takes up a big slice of the pie. It includes, P&V, it includes oral, it includes sometimes for people, it includes anal, hand jobs. It can include cuddling, dry humping, all of that stuff, right? Like any of that can be considered sex if you want it to. But does your sex include blindfolds? Or textural play, like having feathers or satin sheets or velvet touched on your body? Does your sex involve possibly handcuffs, even if they are the fuzzy handcuffs, and knowing that you're being restrained and have to be in a trust-based situation with somebody else? I think that when people think of BDSM, they assume we are talking about pain-focused BDSM. And there's some of that. I am a sexual sadist. I am not going to negate anything that happens in that space. It is my personal space to live in. But it is not everybody's space. I know somebody whose kink is tickling. And they are one of the most joyous people I know. They're great. I know people who are very praise motivated, and the box, the container of the bedroom is the safest place to go. I just need to hear that I did good. We don't get that kind of feedback a lot.
I love this. You opening my eyes, and I'm sure a lot of people are listening, because like I said, I thought it was, like you said, it was pain driven. And I didn't know there were other elements that probably we all take part of and not even realize it. But for example, the most that I've done pain driven, like I have like wax, like hot wax, like I'm not a very, like I haven't been in that world, in that world. But, I'm thinking that, it was just her beating you up, like smacking you around. And I didn't know that, even tickling. That's I mean, I don't like tickling either, but meaning that.
Honestly, I'd rather hit somebody than tickle them any day of the week. It's my own thing. We all have our lines.
That's what I mean. So
yeah.
These are what, anything aside from the normal sex will be considered a kink, or how does that work?
So there is a little bit of we're playing with language a lot here, right? And is there a strict line? There isn't, is kind of my point. There is a little bit of the thing with the word kink, because originally, very originally, a kink was something that was not sexual, that got integrated into sexuality, and therefore became a surprise. Things like restraints, things like that. What is a kink to one person isn't to another, is kind of my point. There are some people who just listen to you and went, I can never have hot wax on my body. Are you kidding? Or tickling isn't sexy. Like, that's a thing I do with my brothers. Like, that's not a sex thing. But for some people it is. So that's kind of where the word kink becomes really, really loose. The phrase BDSM, bondage, submission, masochism, and sadism, that is a little more defined and tends to be in the realm of things that we're going to want to make sure people are fully aware of the risks and fully consenting to. So what I'm a fan of, and I hope to introduce to your whole audience, is something called RAC. It's Risk-Aware Consent Kink. So it is, you can say yes to anything you want as long as you know what all the risks are.
Okay, is this a paperwork kind of deal, or is it a verbal? How do you get this consent?
It can happen a lot of ways. So
what do you recommend? Like,
what do I recommend?
I want you to beat me up for like 10 minutes. Should it be written?
Verbal. For 10 minutes, we're talking probably you're into something I would refer to as benign masochism, which is the level of pain that you get when you eat a hot chili and it makes you, or the level of excitement you get when you jump out a plane. Same thing. We're just going to do that in a dungeon with you strapped to what's called a St. Andrew's cross, which is the big X one. That's a 10-minute beating, an hour-long beating. That's something we would kind of probably refer to as pickup play. So you're going to have that in a dungeon. So there are dungeon monitors. There's people who are walking around making sure everybody's listening to safe words. Everybody knows things. Things are sanitized and clean. There are people around. You're going to be a certain degree of nude, but not usually completely nude. Not usually. And you're going to arrange verbally for one clear kind of set kink or desire. And probably because you've watched a person for a while. That kind of play, you can also do that if people are really interested. You can find a dungeon that does something called tasters, where you go in and they have a bunch of experts on things like electroplay, wax play, flogging, and you can taste it to see if you like it or listen to their spiel on what the safety and all of that is. That kind of pick up play, like I said, it is oral, because there's enough safety nets in. If you're looking at kind of a longer term relationship with somebody, like an FLR, which is a female-led relationship, or something in which you are agreeing to something that would happen past that hour, or something that isn't something that you're seeing in the dungeon already happening, you may sit down and negotiate a more written back and forth to make sure that it's really, really clear. It just depends.
And then why would, and obviously from your perspective and opinion and experience, why would someone, and I'm talking about more extreme, not the tickle, but like, why would someone want to get beat up for an hour or mistreated for an hour? Like, what do you think is the click that someone says, hey, please just step over me?
Have a very particular theory that I actually teach, which is that for us, I spoke of operant conditioning earlier. I talked about Skinner. And with operant conditioning, we're looking at positive and negative reinforcement and punishment. Now, when a lot of people hear those words, they put moral values into the words positive and negative. But Skinner was talking about it in scientific POV. So he was just talking about math. He was talking about plus and minus. You add something or you take something away. You reinforce a behavior, so you try to increase it, or you punish it, you try to decrease it. All attention is a positive because you're adding attention, negative or positive attention, or like praise or humiliation. You're adding attention. And almost all of it reinforces a behavior. It's difficult to add attention to punish a behavior, make it go away. I think that there are a lot of people who look at things like humiliation, they look at pain, and they are as motivating to that person as praise or reward would be. And there are a couple of psychological tricks that happen. In my experience, and please understand, the non-biased studies for these things in science just really aren't there. I cannot back this up with science because it hasn't been studied in the way that I'm talking about yet. I can back up some stuff with science, but this isn't there. In my experience, there are a lot of people out there who need feedback from the people around them to know that they're doing the right thing or not doing the right thing, especially in sex, because it is not something we educate very well at all. We just kind of infer everybody should magically know how to do it on their wedding night. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And they have a hard time accepting straight up praise before the part of the brain that negates it kicks in. Automatically, they're going, oh, well, I could have done better. Or, oh, you don't really mean that. It's all of these things. So one of the things that can happen with something like humiliation or pain is it causes you to live in your body, feel that moment, be very, very present, take things in. And then at the end of all of that, when I say, you did so good, the ego's broken down and you actually hear it. There are a lot of kinds of, so there's something called subspace. And subspace is not always the goal, but can often be the goal, which is a point in time in which you're experiencing such a physical and emotional overwhelm that your body can become weightless. The constant thought pattern going in the head, the constant anxiety, criticism, all of that kind of just goes. It's just gone. And you really exist. And you really are just fully mindful. And for subs, you get pushed into that by the experience. But when I explain it as existing and being mindful, it doesn't sound that much different than meditation or runner's high, does it?
Wow. Yeah, you brought it all full circle from meditation to.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
No, but that's great because I think that brings another point to what you're saying. And from your experience, or are there any studies that within this pain or these things that are, let's say, just to call them something abnormal, even though I don't want to use that word, but like they're not their normal. Do you think that there's some hormonal, like you secrete, I don't know, more of a certain hormone that makes you feel a certain way?
Yeah. I mean, so there are studies when I refer to benign masochism. So we talked about eating spicy food or going through something that really adrenaline spikes you. There are studies that show that when you do that, one of the reasons that we probably push ourselves to do things like that is because it will spike your stress and then your dopamine response. So you balance, right? Or you express, a lot of adrenaline when you're dealing with like high energy things, and kink can be that as well. And then it kind of releases the body. So if you've already been holding a lot of stress, that could be a way to release the body. So there are a lot of studies out there that do also include kink behaviors that show that the body does go through this process, that is not much different than any other physical psychological process that triggers the same things.
So like cortisol and all of these hormones, adrenaline. So all these hormones are being released, such as if you were like in a car accident, like you're just creating that scenario to release these hormones that later after that, you feel that I don't know, rest.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason I bring up jumping out of a plane, because that is, I think, the closest parallel I have, or going on a roller coaster. When you map those hormones, those are very similar to what's happening in a body that's experiencing something like this. And we're talking about like what we would refer to as scenes. We're talking about a moment in time, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, which is the length it usually is, or a couple of hours, or even a night. where you're committing yourself to this one involved activity. And so you can spend the night like chained to somebody's thigh and serving them at that level. Or, we talked about being beaten. That's a scene. That is different than structuring a lifestyle out of this, which can include pocket scenes or just be your daily life. So I'm not going to say that the lifestyle always releases those hormones, but the scenes do. And you know what? Sex does too. So like, it's not the only activity that does this exact same thing. I have a theory, my working theory. I have a lot of theories. I can't prove them, but I'm not wrong. And my working theory is that because in society, we have compartmentalized the bedroom so much, we've kind of separated the actions of the bedroom from your relationships with, say, work or your neighbors, hopefully, or your family, very hopefully. It becomes a safe space to experiment with your ethics. It becomes this safe space to go, do I like that? What does that make me feel? Why does that trigger me? What if I just try this out for 5 minutes, but it doesn't identify who I am for the rest of my life? If you walked into your work tomorrow in a dress and eyeliner, you are now having probably several years of conversations with your workmates. And they are going to ask you who you are now, how you identify. They're going to ask you to have a fully formed idea of everything going on. And you can't be like, I just wanted to see what it was like. The bedroom is the place you can do that.
Got it. It's a certain freedom within those walls, hopefully, that you have. And
it doesn't actually change your relationships with anybody. So you get less pushback, which is also very interesting.
Well, do you believe you got to be open-minded for it? For example, I know if I'm in a long-term committed relationship with someone, there's sometimes respect starts overpowering the sexuality, right? Like there's certain things that you wouldn't do or certain behaviors you wouldn't show because you sort of respect this person. This is your person. Now, if you meet somebody you don't know and they're into some crazy stuff, then you're probably more likely to be like, oh, I don't care. But how do you balance I mean, I don't even know how to ask, like, hey, can you beat me up for an hour? Like, like it's difficult in a relationship. Or do you have any advice for that? Do you coach around that?
I do a lot of coaching with that. I have couples that come to me because they want to change something about the relationship or just change the way they communicate, even if nothing structurally changes. I have couples that come to me coming into kink or into poly, and we'll talk about that.
But how do you? That's what I mean. How do you got the couple already there? So there was already a conversation. I said even before. I mean, it's like, hey, honey, I'm gonna take you to go see Mistress Audry. Like it's not that conversation that you just start out of nowhere, right? Like if they come to you, they already talked about whatever they needed to talk about. So how did you get there, or did you just have it in you and it just?
I think you get there. I think you have to get there. One of the things that I like to emphasize, and I think it's going to be important to everybody, is the difference between intimacy and intensity. Intensity are those one-off, those one-night stands that you have. And look, I'm a fan of intensity. Intensity can be that scene work I was talking about. Intensity can be the flash of a new relationship, and you hit emotional intensity and you've decided you know everything about them and they know everything about you. Time is the only thing that turns that into intimacy. But the problem with intimacy, beautiful problem with intimacy, is that when we're used to using intensity to bond with people, and we have intimacy, which is what we actually want, we don't know how to access intimacy anymore. We didn't need it anymore. And we were only good at finding it when we needed it. One of the things I advise to people out there who are looking at just having new conversations with their partners, two things. I strongly believe that about every 10 years, a woman's body changes enough that how she comes changes. What she's interested in sexually changes. And I think a lot of women are afraid to say that because they're afraid that their partners are going to go, oh, well, you were faking before. It's like, no, I wasn't faking before. Or you weren't interested in that before. Well, I didn't feel safe enough. We hadn't been together long enough for me to know that this relationship was going to be here. The other thing so every 10 years, I think that you should absolutely start your physical sexual journey with your partner over, and absolutely no judgment, no belief that what was working before wasn't working then. It was. It's just fun to start over. And then the second thing that I love to teach people is bringing role play into your bedroom. I think role play is one of the most accessible things for even vanilla couples to do that allows you to do that experimentation we talked about without feeling like, oh, well, if I tried this once, now my partner thinks I want it every time. No, I didn't do that. Sally did that. Or Bambi or whomstever, right? Role play is a great place to go, well, we're just doing this while that name is on.
Wow. So it's still, just to give you a little bit more friction on that, it's still a hard thing to do to every 10 years.
Yes.
Because from a guy's perspective, if she starts doing something new, I'm going to say, where did you learn that? Right? Like, like your mind starts going, this is not the routine. And sometimes if you don't communicate things, it could be misconstrued, as like, well, yeah, exactly. Like you said, you never liked that before. Now you like, well, so who showed you that? Or, so do you recommend being in the moment, or do you recommend talking about it?
I think it's going to depend on how much you're veering from your norm. If your norm is that like you are now switching positions where like, yeah, we used to always fuck on the bed and now we're going to do it on a table. If that's the variation we're talking about, fine, get a little spontaneous with it. If all of a sudden you're putting fingers in new places, you need to talk ahead of time. So kind of be aware of what your range normally is and how much you're stepping out. Is it one step or is it like the whole block?
Well, does that kill the moment? Like if you're going at it and the moment is intense, does the conversation kind of put that mind and take the body out? Or
if somebody is thinking about this while they're listening to us talk, they need to have that conversation before they're in that moment. If somebody is having these thoughts already, I'm assuming most of our audience isn't mid-coitus. Fine if you are, but it's an assumption I'm making. So that tells me that you are having non-lust-filled thoughts about how to approach this. So if you're already having those thoughts, do it. Have the conversation. Also remember that you can have a conversation about just the thing in front of you, just the thing the person is saying, without it meaning everything you're afraid of. You can say what you're afraid of, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. We bring a lot of loaded conversations in. So I do believe that like one of the things that we're concerned about in relationships that matter a lot to us, there's a lot to lose there, right? And so the fear of bringing these conversations up is almost a compliment to the nature of the relationship itself. It's almost in saying, I'm scared to lose this, and I'm scared to lose your respect because it's so valuable to me that I am holding back a part of myself, even if it's just a little one-off fluttering question. I'm holding it back because this matters more to me. I invite you to switch that and have enough faith in your relationship to have that conversation. And if you don't have enough faith in your relationship and go, this is a strong, beautiful, valid, emotionally validating relationship that is worth preserving, and therefore it is strong enough to take me asking a question. If you don't have that faith, go work on the relationship. Don't work on your boner.
Great advice.
Intimacy.
Great advice.
Oh,
so then how do we in getting out of the relationship that dynamic and going into maybe in a lot of men here, so women that you don't know, and that those encounters with women, like how do you have any pointers for men to sort of, can you turn a woman out? Like maybe she's like, oh no, can you make her wild, or she already has to have it? Like, and if you can turn her wild, like how do you do that?
Yeah, you absolutely can, but you can't do it with your kinks. You have to do it with hers. I think a lot.
You don't know her. How do you know them?
You ask questions. And you listen to the answer, and you ask why that's the answer. You ask a follow-up, not a checklist. And this is advice for non-sexual dating too. Do this with your partner across coffee. Ask a question for the point of getting to know them, not checking off a list that said, I remember to ask that question. I'm going to remember her favorite color is blue, but I'm not going to ask why it's blue.
Yeah, but so that conversation is also difficult if you're trying to get to know this person and you're like, hey, so I don't know, do you like to get beat, with a, so, I don't know. So can you like to get handcuffed to the bed or?
There's conversations all the time. What do you mean it's difficult? Now, I would say that part of it depends on what you want the relationship with this person to be. If you are looking for a one-off, one night, you're probably not afraid to ask these questions. If you're looking for something more than that, build them more than that. But also, there's this thing that guys do. And I'm a person who also dates. I have dated before. There's this thing that guys do, and I don't think they know we can see through it. They ask questions for the purpose of getting to the answer they want to give us. And sex is a great topic in which they tend to do this. A lot of men out there have one or two fetishes that they are very interested in exploring, but they haven't really told anybody or a lot of people. And they have this idea that if they can find that one person who is compatible with those, she will understand not just the fetish, everything about that guy. And in general, there are a lot of guys who are dating for the purpose to have one person be their mom, their therapist, their sexual partner, their dominatrix, their sub, all of those things. And the idea that she would understand something about them that they have not told anybody else and not judge them for it is like it's an on-off switch. They've just decided that's what it is. So when I say
like if someone asks you, if you ask her, hey, so you like your feet smelled? Is it really just a mirror?
So that's such a leading question. I would ask something more open to start off with, which is if we are talking about sex already, not pulling this out in the middle of coffee as my third question, but if we're talking about sex, I would ask, do you like very passionate sex, or do you like very tender sex? Like, what's the energy you're looking for? And kind of invite that level of conversation. And then if they answer with, oh, I like really passionate sex, I like to feel, that intensity, I like to feel that somebody really wants me, then follow up with questions like, okay, what can I do to give you that feeling? Get invested in what they're saying. And if they follow up with something like, well, I read a lot of book talk and I'm into like this kind of like more, can you growl for me? Can you get gruff? Can you get rugged? Yeah. There can also be well, what if I choose like to worship you like a goddess? Would that also feel really good? What if I worshipped non-sexual parts of you, like your feet? Would that be okay? I will say that there's so much taboo about foot fetish that it's probably not the first thing I would bring up, but bringing up it in context of general goddess worship, how you want the partner to feel. Now you're seducing somebody. You're not sitting there going, here's all my stuff, touch it or not. You're going, how do I make you feel what you want to feel in bed? How do we get there together?
But do you think, because I think a lot of women, if not most, don't know what they like because they probably have never really experienced what they like yet. No, you think they do?
No, no, I think a lot of women do know what they like. I think a lot more women know what they like than say it though. And one of the reasons is they're very much penalized for knowing what they like. An actual dominant woman is considered quite rare. There are lots of us, especially in the pro circuit. The pro circuit, it sounds like we're circus clowns or something, but especially amongst other professionals, other educators, I certainly know a number. I know people who are naturally very dominant women, but we are not in the majority. And I don't think that that's fundamentally true. I think most people out there switch. They vary between wanting to be more dominant and wanting to be more submissive. That is a natural thing. But I think that there's a huge societal push for women not to be clear about their sexual desires because of what you mentioned earlier. If your partner brought something to you that they wanted to try, that they got off of freaking book talk, your thought is, well, you didn't like that before. Where'd you learn that? If I come in and I'm like, I know exactly how I like you to go down on me, you're thinking, well, what's your body count? How do you know that? Unless you explored it for yourself, then that's a problem. And that kind of thinking, where you want a woman who both absolutely knows what she likes physically and can teach you because you don't know, but also want her not to be a slut and not to know too much, is why so few people are happy with their sex lives.
So how do you get them to open up, right, without them feeling judged? I'm speaking now, obviously, if they don't know, if you don't know them. Yeah, the woman. If you don't know them, obviously, if you have a relationship, you probably know this person, but meaning, you're just in the get to know you stage. How would you, because I see what you're saying. I take back what I said, because, yeah, I think there's a filter that a lot of women have because they don't want to seem a certain way. But how do you get that filter and that wall to come down? Is there a way?
For seeming that way can be really high. And I do need to note that. If you veer from the societal script too much, there are strong consequences. There's societal feedback. There's aggression from the person you're talking to. This isn't women don't want to seem. It can be dangerous. It can be dangerous in your work if they know that you have multiple boyfriends at once. It can be dangerous on a date if people find out that you don't necessarily love every person that you have sex with. And I mean physically dangerous. So that's important to note. How do you make somebody open up to you without them feeling judged? The first step is to actually not judge them. That's the first step. And so when I point out that there are actual consequences, the reason I point that out is because women have a really good instinct for knowing when those potential consequences are there. And we not you from what I've seen, and I appreciate that, but certain people who try to teach seduction techniques, their goal is to gaslight women. Is to say, here are all your instincts that we told you to have because the world can be unsafe. Now ignore them. And then I'm going to teach these men how to con you into ignoring them. And so women's instincts have gotten stronger because they've had experiences. So if you haven't done the work to really go, okay, the past is the past. I love who she's been, who she is, or who she potentially can be because she's learned all of these things in the same way that she learned how to drive a car or any other skill. And you haven't done the work to not judge the person in front of you. We're going to see it in your face. It's an automatic response.
Do you believe
the best way to not judge people is to...
Well, that's my thing. It's difficult. No, it's difficult to not judge someone, right? Even if we try not to, there's always a little side of us that's calculating things. But do you think that this is a first world sort of approach? I'm looking at undeveloped countries, and I don't see a big kink community there, or am I wrong? Are there, in undeveloped countries, is there a kink community there as well? I'm speaking of, where you have poverty.
Yeah, no, what we look at as kink, where I'm like wearing vegan leather and I have several thousands of dollars worth of equipment and toys, probably 4 feet from this camera angle, that appearance, especially as we got like higher, like very Instagram looking, like super latexy and all of this, that takes money. So when you ask if kink is the way you're used to seeing it, probably it's a first world. But when I talked about how like I don't really see that much difference between kink and vanilla, it's just like where you put your personal line. That's true in other countries too. It really is. And a lot of kink work is based in taboo work, right? And every culture has its own taboos. We see some crossover, but a lot of them are individual to the culture. So there may be taboo work, kink work that's going on in a culture that I don't have personal knowledge of, that I'm not recognizing as that because I don't have that taboo. I don't realize it is a taboo. One of my best examples that I have for this actually isn't even a kink one. I like to point out how Americans tend to view Jamaican culture, because Jamaican culture is known for being very, especially the music scene, very marijuana centric, right? Really pot centric. So we get an idea in our head that Jamaican culture is very hippie. It's very loose. It's very free love. It's all of these things. Jamaican culture is also very Christian, and all in all is very anti-gay. And a lot of Americans don't realize that that's a strong part of the culture. And I'm not saying that from a position of judgment. I'm just saying that it's not our culture. So if we assume all of these attached things to being a hippie liberal pothead are the culture just because they smoke pot, we're missing huge nuances. If we're talking about other cultures that I'm not raised in, I can't tell you what taboo work they're doing because I don't know what their taboos are.
Got it. That's amazing, an amazing perspective. So is there a line, and this question just came to me right now, because are there people that maybe on the edge of a mental problem in this world? Not that it's a mental problem, but in every situation, there's always like a loony bin, right?
Yeah.
Are there people in your experience, or have you heard of that are like, they don't only just do this, but they're just really not there. They want things that are just absurd because they don't have it, or
we have so many checks and balances for exactly what you're talking about. And part of it is, so I'm gonna hit a bunch of different points in a row because you've hit on a bunch of different points. The first is that we talked about science. There is a great study out there, with pretty broad spectrum of sample. I want to say it's like 3,000 people that show that practitioners of BDSM are more like, recover faster from large impact events. So anything that would create stress or trauma, they recover faster from them. And also that their reported diagnosed mental illness is commensurate with the population as a whole. So I don't know if they recover faster, therefore they got into BDSM, or they got into BDSM, therefore they learned to recover faster, or if it's something else entirely, because we're talking causation versus correlation. But when we are talking about mental illness in the community, I make a huge effort to try and what I refer to as depathologize kink. We are trying to take out the concept of mental illness as a cause for kink, and kind of point out, hey, this is kink, not therapy. There are things for that. That being said, mental illness does exist in the community at the same rate it does in the general population. And we are doing a lot of high intensity work. We're doing stuff that's going to trigger feelings. And we're walking the edge, sometimes literally, sometimes with knives or needle play. We are walking the edge very deliberately. So that risk, right, between what happens if something goes bad in a cafe versus what happens if something goes bad in a dungeon, it's not equal. So that's when I say we have a lot of checks and balances for that. A lot of what I talked about with the RAC, the risk-aware consensual kink, is that you have to be aware of the risks. And both or all parties have to agree to them. And make sure that they're okay. Are there bad actors in kink? Sometimes, yeah. And that's what community is important. There are bad actors anywhere, in any group, in your church too. But that's what community is for.
Not
And
church.
so anybody who's really not church, not in my local cafe, not in my city hall, never. Yeah, that is,
So
it is one of those things that I recommend. If you're really, really interested in kink, go find a supportive dungeon. If you can't do that, there's FetLife, which is an online community. Be careful about who you contact with, but you can make groups in there as well. And just kind of, be smart. Apply the same rules in this group that you would anybody else. Just because they're in the group doesn't mean they're vetted.
That's one of my questions actually about finding a dungeon and that part. I think there's going to be a lot of people from here listening, looking for dungeons right now. Dungeon. But
Go for it.
before that, I kind of want you to tell me, have you found anything that's been disturbing to you? Like, give us like maybe an example or two of the craziest thing that somebody wanted you to do or to be done to them that you're like, even for you, that you've probably seen a lot, that you're like, oh no.
So I will say I do have several hard lines that I choose not to cross. I don't what we would refer to as fluid or blood bond with anybody that I'm not in a personal long-term relationship with. So there are lots of activities that and that's true of most people who are doing pick-up play, most people who are doing pro work. We just don't. There's some of the more extreme body modifications that is just not my thing. And I don't have the experience to do it safely. And I'm not super into learning it right now.
The sake of curiosity here, like what would, because you're using great vocabulary, but give us that example of what that would be like that body modification. And I got an idea, but I don't know.
I'm probably not. So I do, for both personal and for pickup reasons, I will do what's referred to as CBT, or not cognitive behavioral therapy, cock and ball torture. I tend to emphasize more on the balls. It's amusing to me. I've done sounding before, which is the threading of sterilized equipment down the urethral passage. You can do it to vagina urethral structures as well. But when we get to the point where I've known somebody who's had their testicles sewed around their penis. I've known people who have had nails driven through testicles. That's moving a little further out of my realm of expertise. That being said, I have done other needle play. So, for me, I very rarely hit a spot in which I'm like, ooh, that squeaks me. And much more hit a spot where I'm like, that's not a thing that I have enough expertise on to do with you safely. And therefore, I'm going to choose not to. I will say that there is a little bit of a difference between what I do, like I said, with pick-up play or with clients, than what I do personally. And that's only because I don't have intercourse with my clients. I don't. So there's a whole realm of kind of things that I will do with a partner that I don't necessarily do with a client. There's also some stuff that I will do that's more fun to do with clients because they're very into it and we know what we're doing as a long-term thing. It doesn't affect my relationship with them. So that's its own line. But I don't super judge people. Actually, for me personally, the greatest red flag I have is when you get people who come in and they're like, oh, well, I'm a dom because I say so, but I have no experience. I have no expertise. I've learned nothing. I will not be listening to any of my peers. In fact, I don't consider people who call themselves mistress or dom to be my peers. And I'm going to go do things with subs. And you're like, okay, calm down. Calm down, Alpha Bro. You can't do that safely.
Got it. So let me,
and that's what.
Piggyback on that a little bit. So you're saying in your personal life, would you be kinkier or less kinky, like in your preference?
it's so hard to say that as a scale, because then you have to like think of different kinks and go, okay, is that to the left or right of this? For me, it's more of a mind map. They're just they link in different ways and go different ways. In my personal life, I do something called FLR, which is a female-led relationship. I am the dominant in my DS relationships, and I do key holding. I also do key holding with clients. So that is when the genitals are, for short or long term, put into a caged situation that has a key to it. I will hold that key and then tell that person when they are allowed to uncage themselves. I do a lot of denial work, which is the control of somebody's orgasms. I will do it virtually or in person, in person with my clients and things like that. I do a lot of edging work. I think that with my personal life, I don't know that any of the scenes that I do are any kinkier or non-kinkier, but because I know that the next day and the day after that, I'm with this person, we can go to like more emotionally exhaustive places, and I can know that our aftercare will last for days and that we're resetting. Aftercare is what you do after any scene. You should do some level of aftercare. I recommend it after regular sex, where you like drink water and you make sure the person has a blanket, and you just check in and you do pillow talk and you check to make sure that person had a fun time, or that if they've used a lot of calories, you get them a snack so their blood sugar doesn't drop. That's aftercare. Sometimes if you've done like a really intensive scene, you may do aftercare 2 or 3 days later.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
So like
that's a
in
lot
my
to
personal,
process.
yeah.
No, but in everything you're
personal life
saying,
can be a
it's
little-
common sense. It's like, yeah, aftercare, yeah, obviously, but we don't see it that way.
So
we just kind of
there's
see it. We
this
just kind of move
scene.
through life. I'm sorry, there's like a delay or something, but
We
we just
take it
move
for
through
granted, and that's
the actions.
yeah. In BDSM, as well as in the poly community, I'm going to say that those conversations we talked about, you're like, well, do you talk about that or write that down? Sometimes both, because you don't take things for granted. You don't make assumptions. And if I can give all of the people out there who consider themselves vanilla, no matter how straightforward, modeled by the world your relationship looks just like your parents, don't take your relationship for granted. Ask questions even if you think you know the answer. Go get yourself a poly book and ask the questions, because it's really funny to hear your partner's answer, even if you're monogamous. And it will be, and you see people kind of edge on trying to do this, where people explore what their love languages are. Yeah. You explore, like, how do you feel validated? You explore, if I hold your wrist down, do you feel trapped, excited, or both? Like, it's just not taking things for granted.
Okay, so
99%.
for some men, all of us men, do you
Yes.
what would you recommend? That some tips. I don't know about maybe someone's gonna try the lock and the key and all of that. But for example, I'm not that experimental, but like, what would be something that I could do? Like, if you wanted to just kind of test some things out and see, like, are there some
Spice it up.
easy stuff like that's not gonna require my urethra to be penetrated or whatever that is?
Yeah,
like, like
absolutely.
just
So for partnered work, I'm going to go back to that role play thing. And a lot of us have done it. A lot of us have done the schoolgirl thing, right? Or, we've played at the plumber showing up. Do that. It can be with roles. It can be with a premise. I'm going to introduce an old improv trick. It's called yes and, where somebody says something to you and you respond with a yes. You just take in what they say and you build on it. So if I say to you, oh no, I forgot my homework, you're going to go, yes, and you've been a very bad girl. That kind of building, where you are accepting in what somebody has taken that risk with, and you're building. and you realize that this is a scene that is a role play between the two of you. It's not going to affect tomorrow, right? Gives you a lot of safety. So I highly recommend that. I also recommend, by the way, yes, and if you're stuck at a dinner party and you don't know how to talk to people, if somebody says something to you, you just kind of build on it. Even if it gets absurd, you've bonded with another human being. I think curiosity is the best answer to nihilism I've ever learned. That being said, if you're solo and you're just kind of looking for an interesting way to spice up your play, my recommendation is something called edging. Now, edging it can be done by men, women, anybody, whatever genitalia you happen to have. But it is the process of stimulating yourself right to the edge of orgasm and then bringing yourself back down and denying that orgasm for as long as you can. Number one, it's going to make you better in bed, especially men. Number two, those orgasms are amazing when they come. And honestly, you can kind of do it in between stuff. If you're like, I cannot get these emails out, let me, instead of rubbing one out, finish my emails, and then I can finish. I'm here for motivation.
For combining the, the kink with the job advice. Like now, because that's a great. I recommend that if you work at home, right? Because if you're at the office in a cubicle, you might not want to edge while there's people around you, or I don't know.
Maybe not if you're doing manuscripts in a coffee shop. I'm just saying.
Yeah, if you're an attorney and you're
I recommend in court, you're like, hold on, I can't do my finishing until I can do my finishing. Yeah. Maybe not. Yeah. I do this a lot with my clients because a lot of I'm an investment. I will admit, I have a very selective clientele list and they are all comfortable with our ongoing arrangement, but, they tend to fit in the demographic of very, very stressed out, high power job. Or, oddly enough, and sometimes there's a crossover, previous military experience. And I don't know if you know much about those demographics. They suck at breathing. If you tried to get either one of those to do kind of like a basic, okay, we're going to breathe in and then out, they're just no time for it. But if you throw one of those breathing apps onto the corner of their screen, sometimes it might have body parts of mine, and you let it pulsate with the same degree that you want them to breathe into. So it pulsates out for a count of 10, holds, and then back down for a count of 10. And then you have them add Kegels. So you're going to squeeze, do your Kegel for 10, hold, and release. You can do that in the middle of a Zoom call. Nobody knows. You're breathing. Your prostate's healthier. You're better in bed. And you haven't punched anybody through the Zoom.
Wait, hold on. I'm doing some Kegels now. Okay. So I've
been doing them the whole time. You didn't notice?
I did not. But thank you for letting us know. I'm sure some people are going to rewind this and reimagine the video again.
There you go. Yeah. So you can figure out when I forgot to.
Those are great, but I'm realizing there's so much more than just, just boom, bam. It's like things to do, and it's a whole world. And in this world, now going back to the dungeon, because do you recommend that you get like somebody cheap from Craigslist to get started, or go to a dungeon?
So here's where I'm going to get a little into some more of the real work nuance that most people don't know. There is a difference between a dominatrix and a full service provider that does rough trade. And when I say full service provider, most people are thinking about prostitution. I am going to note that is a legal definition of a crime. So I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to anybody who does kind of penetrative sex. You can get somebody who does that It is illegal in the state of California, in the country we live in, and several other countries, but legal in some. You can get somebody who does that, who's very good at it, who may or may not have an extensive history with BDSM and may be able to integrate that. That's fine. You can't get them off of Craigslist anymore, I can tell you that, but there are a few other apps. What I do, if you are coming to me for the purpose of orgasm, you are not going to make it into my dungeon, because that is not what we're working on. It doesn't mean it never happens. It just means it really shouldn't. And I would recommend, especially if you are new and you have very specific kinks that you want to explore, I would highly recommend coming into a dungeon and meeting somebody. There are dungeons that have people listed online. You're going to talk to them ahead of time. You're going to pre-negotiate everything. You're going to make sure your vibes are right. They specialize in what you want, and you can come in with that checklist. But that's why you want to get a professional, not just because she has experience, but also because she's fine doing what you want to learn or you want to explore. If you're trying to like date somebody and they happen to be professional, and I happen to have a lot of experience with this, and you start showing up a checklist, I'm going to kick you out of my bed, because that's not a relationship. And I think that that is one of those things that I want to make sure people are doing. You can explore equally with a partner, but if you're like, I want to do these things, go to a pro. Let her be that with you. Yeah. Don't use human beings as kink dispensers.
Okay. Even though maybe that's their kink, that they like to be a kink dispenser, but that's the point.
Yeah. Go ahead and find that.
But could you bring, for example, could I bring a girl to you for you to train her to be a dominatrix?
100%. Yeah.
So what if she has no experience? Like you go, hey, I'm going to take you to her and just.
If she has interest, 100%. Largely, I'm going to find out what she likes in life, what makes her feel the most confident in her skin, what part of her body she centers her energy, feels the most control over. And we're going to lead from there. I am not going to, if you brought a girl to me and was like, this is my girlfriend, I want her to be a dominatrix, I don't want her to be this kind of dominatrix, I am not going to do that. I am going to learn who she is, and I'm going to teach her how to step into her power. And I can do that. There's a lot of doms out there who specialize in that. It's a great skill, I think, for any person to have, but especially women. Even if you do that and then go, you know what, sexually, this isn't the spot I want to be in, it still explores and experiments with whole new parts of your self-identity, with your ego, and being able to take that into the office place, being able to just sit in that and know that it's there. I think it's a wonderful experience.
And to find a dungeon, sorry to interrupt, but because you're recommending the and I use Craigslist as a crazy place, but meaning, if you meet somebody in the street, it's probably not as safe as if going to a dungeon. But how do you find, what will be the search terms that you would put on Google or ChatGPT to find a dungeon, without going to some kind of porn site?
To find a dungeon, I wouldn't ask ChatGPT, because it's just going to make up whatever answer it wants you to hear or it thinks you want to hear. I would say Google's fine. The other place you can go is there's a website called FetLife, as in fetish life, FetLife. You can go on there, and there's a lot of the communities, a lot of the dungeons are listed, and you can get an idea of, oh, is this a high education dungeon? Is this one that has a lot of people who work there and that's what they're doing? What's the emphasis? But yeah, you can Google the city you're in or the zip code you're in and type BDSM dungeon and go look at the website. And as you look at the website, you're going to be able to see words like, oh, this is a membership only dungeon. Okay, that's probably not what I'm looking for. Oh, this dungeon has these events going on. Let me take a look at the events and come and buy a ticket to like a femdom takeover night or a taster night and just walk around and experience it. Or you will also look at a lot of them that will have, these are the dominatrixes, the subs. You have professional subs, you have professional switches who work here. This is their picture. This is their interests. Email them directly. And so almost all of those will have a link. So you speak to them directly. When I'm explaining how dungeons work for a dominatrix or even a dom, there are men who work in them and fully identify male. I kind of explain it like being a hairdresser. You have some places in which you come in and you just kind of work your hours and the dungeon does everything. But most places, because that's not as interesting to people, most places, what they do is they pay the insurance, they keep the lights on, they keep the big equipment in there, they keep it clean, they keep you safe, and you come in, get your own clients, your own expertise, and you build out of there.
Okay. And then are there any pointers to finding a safe one? Like if you're looking online and you're not going to end up in some alley somewhere, like, do you have any pointers like
So
what to look for?
that's
Maybe
one of the reasons. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm actually recommending a dungeon, because when we talk about like community, something that has a building attached, for the most part, if they're not safe, they don't last long. When you're talking about like, oh, what if I go on Craigslist or these other apps and I find somebody, that's why you're more likely, I wouldn't even say physical safety, because you're, as the client, you're way less likely to come across a physical problem with an encounter than the provider does. They're the ones that are usually in the unsafe space, but you are more likely to come across scams. And that's a whole thing that you and I can have a totally different conversation about, because I teach like sex and romance scams as well, and what the indicators for those are. And unfortunately,
so
in our community, if you're an independent provider,
I don't know, go ahead.
how do we find me? If you're an independent provider, because credit card processors don't like sex work, a lot of independent providers use the same resources like Cash App that scammers do. So it's really hard to tell the difference sometimes.
Do you take a deposit?
I'm going to tell you.
Before?
Do I take a deposit?
Or is it a general practice?
Yeah, it's a general practice to take a tribute. And one of the reasons for that is because a lot of people will try to talk to you for a very, very long time with no intention of following through. So a tribute is going to be like a deposit. I take one where you basically, if you're interested in becoming a client, mostly I talk you out of it. And then you would pay for a phone call with me, and we would talk on the phone for a certain amount of time to see if we're compatible, if I can get your life goals. And then after that, I'm a subscription service, because like I said, I do long-term stuff, but that's not terribly uncommon that somebody won't talk to you unless you've sent a tribute or some sort saying that you are actually interested in this. But I would say that if you're talking to somebody, make sure they have a good website, make sure they have friends, make sure they have clear boundaries. Any dominatrix who's willing to do anything doesn't know anything and isn't going to do anything anyway. Yeah.
That's good to know. So is this an industry with money? Maybe women that are looking into, or not looking, but maybe are like, hey, I could try that. Is it something you recommend to women to get into? Money wise?
I'm going to tell you, it's not as much as people think it is. I think that there is so the average cost, and it can be higher in cities like LA or New York that have high cost of living, but the average cost for an hour with a dominatrix is about $300. And I think people look at that and they go, that's amazing money. I would say that dominatrixes spend, even when they're in a dungeon, a lot of time training, getting all that equipment together, having the whole physical aspect to it, and having conversations, like ongoing conversations that may or may not pay off. You have that hour with the dominatrix, but when you're meeting her, you're going to spend 2 or 3 hours going back and forth in text. And that's only if that produces something. And so it's not a laborless job. And we're not even talking about the physical aspect of I know you joke about it. Beating on somebody is hard work. It's a physical workout. And doing things correctly is physically laborious. One of the reasons that I don't do as many in-person sessions anymore is because, number one, I find the long-term more pleasant or more emotionally fulfilling. But the second reason is because it is a very hard impact on the body. So is there money in it? Yes. But it's not easy money. It's have a love for this. Do it because you want to be here and you love learning these things and you have a passion for it. And also, like any sex work, and I do, even though I don't have sex with clients, do consider the sex work in the same way a stripper or a cam girl is sex work. Like any sex work, there's a lot of stigma. And if you are publicly present, are you going to do something afterwards? You know?
Wow. I didn't think of that beating someone that I was joking about. It's true. It's like a boxer, right? Like it's physically consuming. After a boxing match, you're out. And I'm assuming it's sort of like that same, you go 12 rounds and you're ready to go to sleep.
It depends on how heavy impact somebody is. But I have a friend. So one of the things about the community is that, like, you get to know all the makers, right? And all the best stuff is being made by some guy who just really likes making stuff. I have a friend who's come out with these swivel floggers. So the flogger is what you're probably thinking about when you're thinking about whipping. A whip is going to be long. It's going to have like single tail or double tail. But a flogger is the one that has like a bunch of leather falls is what they're called coming off of it. And that's what most things that you do, it's that and canes and paddles, right? And you're going like you're whipping, and you can go Florentine, which is both hands, or you can go up, you can go down. I have a friend who came out with one that the handle itself has a swivel pivot. So it's just like these two little eye hooks that go into each other. So the falls will swing for you, and you're doing a much smaller motion here to get them to swing. And having him come into a dungeon and show that and seeing the reaction on all these doms' faces, be like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, because it was a tool that did some of the work for you. And it was so exciting. And we just got elated. And it's funny that that's kind of one of those costs that most people don't think about. Yeah.
Yeah, no cost. And I didn't realize that there were tools and different brands and different quality. I mean, obviously it's obvious, but you don't think of these things like, wait, so you probably have a favorite brand and there's, so Nike, do they have any of those or not yet? Does Nike or Reebok or?
So all of, yeah, right. No, all of my favorite brands of equipment that I use isn't a brand so much as it is like this guy, Michael, who goes by Lumber Snackers, is making stuff that I really adore. Or, brand is doing Hellbent leather. Or you've got like Metal Bound, which is this whole company that makes these giant metal beds that have like cages in them, or you can attach things to them. It's all of my favorite brands are some guy who made this his life's mission. Or some girl who's like way into it, or some non-binary. It doesn't matter. That's the least important part of it. Because when these things get used, it has to be really ergonomic. All of it does. And that's not a thing that can super be like, it's not, you don't want to get your kink stuff off Temu. Right?
Is there
that's
stuff
holding bodily weight.
Is there stuff there?
Yeah.
Have you gotten any of it?
Yeah, we jumped on Temu's first kink set. Yeah. I have some of it that I have used for photo sessions before because I didn't care what happened to it. But like, I would never put it on a body. I don't try, like, there's like safety standards that I really care about. Like, will this break when I'm using this? Can this hold the weight I'm putting onto it? Is the edge of the flogger of the leather, is each one of those falls too sharp? It's a weird thing that'll happen with pleather where you get like that you know, that pleather feel where you're like, why is the leather sharp? Imagine that as a flogger. No, thank you.
Wow.
So yeah,
We'll do it. We're going to
there's
do a whole
bad
other
quality
episode about,
stuff that only looks good on Instagram.
we'll do another episode of just products, and then you can show us, and then
Yeah.
put links to where to really get them, you know, because I think I never even thought about it. And I'm like, now, well, if I go on Amazon, I don't even know what I'm looking for. You know, how do I find that
No, I wouldn't buy most of the
cage
stuff
for
on
my dick or
Amazon
whatever?
either. No.
That-
There's a couple of really good sites for that. I can give you those.
Well, let's do this. How do we get in contact with you with all these questions and more? And what kind of,
any questions you want?
well, tell us, like, what do you, well, obviously you have your clients, and those are probably very selective, and that's probably a conversation that someone that's interested is going to have with you. But do you offer more than just the clientele? Do you teach courses? What else can people consume from Mistress Audry Black, Live Black?
The easiest way to find me, whether you have questions or you just like my voice and want to hear it more, the easiest way is Substack. Substack has all of my links, like my Instagram. It has my website. Most importantly, and I post it all the time, it has my podcast, which is called Place Marker for Perversion. And I like to get people to teach me things I don't know. And so I have had on said podcasts poets. I've had people who run things called Torture Garden. I've had Hue Cows, which is going to be a whole new ballpark for you. We'll talk about that later. But I've also had philosophers. I had a nurse talking about what do you talk to your medical professionals about if you're interested in various activities. And we just have these extensive conversations. In fact, the last one that just came out was with Father Nathan Monk. And we talked about purity culture in America in the 1990s. So I will talk to anybody about anything. Let's get weird with it. But I do post that on my Substack. It's also available on all the major streaming services. If you're interested in more one-on-one services other than my clientele, we have to really talk about that. I do some coaching. I do couples coaching and Zoom. And coming up pretty soon, I will be teaching at DomCon New Orleans. It'll be my first time in New Orleans, so I'm very excited about that. I'm teaching a class called Beyond Ritual, which is a course on goddess worship in FLRs, how to keep the spark of devotion alive and interesting. So yeah, I'm everywhere.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm excited to see.
You're an entrepreneur, really.
I have a book that I wrote that I'm still shopping around to find the right home for. And it has, I used to be very, very discreet. I've had my arrangement with my clients for a very long time, but the idea of having like an Instagram and a Substack and all of these things and doing workshops that weren't just for other doms is so new to me. And so it's one of those things when you have something you really believe in, and I really do believe in this book, you kind of go, okay, so now what do I do to support it? So
I love it. So do your family, and this is going off, I was going down to end, but does your family accept this? All of them, none of them, some of them? How does this work in the family dynamic for you?
We'll say, I'm sure that there's like maybe some cousins or an uncle that doesn't know what I do. I don't know that I've completely talked about it one-on-one with every person. But I do have a very supportive network. My sister is going to be my biggest advocate there, and she knows what I do. She knows who I am. She knows why, and is just the most loving person on the planet. I've learned not to be judgmental through her more than anybody in the entire world. And then my very best friend is Mistress Siren, and she's also my business partner. She does, like I said, I wasn't always public. And so I don't know how to build a website. So she does that side of it for me. And she's also a working dominatrix and does content creation. So it's interesting because I do have a lot of friends who are not in this world, and they are aware that I am and will occasionally ask me questions. But for the most part, like, it's not that big of a deal.
That's great.
It's usually strangers who have more
that's how it
questions.
should be.
I'm fascinated to hear what questions.
What questions? What? Sorry.
I think your audience is going to have very distinctive. I'm really interested to see which questions your audience has, because I think those are going to be really unique questions.
And I love how you made a business. Well, you created a business out of your passion, and that's beautiful. So I'm also going to. I just started this moment. I'm going to be offering butt smackings for the ladies as part of that's my new business. So ladies, hurry! There's only a few hundred left. So I'm gonna get some clients. I was like, I didn't know I could. Like, what? Come to my dungeon.
My question for you is, on these butt smackings, are they over a table, over a knee, over a bench? Are they bare hand? Are they paddled? Do you know what parts of the body to avoid? How far down the thigh can you go? Are they bare-assed? Are they covered-assed? It turns out, hey, that thing takes work.
Thanks a lot.
Not even sex is easy money, huh?
I just shut down my business like right now. I opened it and I just closed it. I'm done. I don't.
Leave it to the professionals, baby.
I will do it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I am fascinated. I'm not done. Like, my mind right now is an overload. That's one thing. You gotta be, when you have so many things in your mind that are limiting, like, I couldn't search for this stuff on Google unless it's incognito, obviously, but like, it's hard to explain. I don't know, I want to get my balls smacked and pierced. Like, that's not a search term if you're like out in the world that you want there, right? So this conversation, I think it just kind of humanizes.
I mean, I'm going to tell you, Google is safe. You can search for that there. There's not a better place to ask the question than at home.
Incognito,
incognito. It is incognito. Incognito. Yeah, it is okay. You can ask the question. Here's the thing. There are mentors for almost every other part of your life, right? You're going to have your parents. You're going to have teachers. You're going to have educational mentors, especially if you're moving on. You're going to have work mentors in the business place, and if you hire an individual coach. You're going to have mentors in religious aspects. Everywhere out there are mentors. And what I'm telling you is there's mentors in this too. You just have to be brave enough to ask.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So there you guys, like, ask away. And I'm going to link all your information there, your contact information under this video. I really, really appreciate that you took the time to do this. And what I love about this is a conversation, because I think when you hear dominatrix, you immediately think, oh, that you were going to be wearing some leather and like some whips around you and like some fire behind you, and it's like, hey, normal human being. Like, who would have thought that, she could just walk around society like without, like, it's part of your job. It's kind of like a cop doesn't walk around with his uniform. Well, I don't know, but I don't think they walk around 24 hours a day with it. When you go home, you become someone else. So
yeah.
So thank you so much for.
I wouldn't say that I'm ever not this person. I'm always this person, but I'm this person too. And everybody's like that. Everybody is more complicated than we give them credit for. And that's okay.